Welcome to the Stewart Squared podcast. Today we're going to talk about many things, as is our habit, but I want to understand more about Netscape, and I want to understand more about Dan Harple and his relationship to Netscape. Who is this fellow?
Well, you're asking what he did at Netscape. Wow, that's interesting. I have to go back and look at it because I met him after he left Netscape. Senior Vice President. Oh, he sold his company to Netscape. His company was called InSoft. First commercial VoIP. You know what VoIP means?
Voice over Internet Protocol, Skype.
Yeah, VoIP products. Audio, video codecs, first real-time collaborative shared whiteboard, streaming media servers, standards for real-time media.
Right, let's talk about
first
that.
Real-time collaboration web developers platform, including RTSP. Do you know what that is?
No, what is that?
I'm guessing because I don't know what it is, but it's probably real-time standard protocol, something like that. And then Netscape bought the company, and he lived there for 2 years. And then he went and started it. And there's a whole bunch of academic stuff here, but he started a company in July of 1998. Yeah, which is after Netscape, called Context Media, which appears he sold to Oracle ultimately.
So how did you guys connect?
It was through Context Media, and I'm wondering if I'm getting the right company, because he's a seminal company for enterprise content integration, and which is not what I remember.
But
so
this was
anyway,
at NEA. Yep.
He was at NEA, yeah. So NEA invested in his company and probably made him an entrepreneur in residence after that. Although he doesn't list NEA, at least not on his LinkedIn. But like a lot of things, I went and visited him in Amsterdam, and I'm trying to remember, he ended up in Amsterdam for some reason. I don't remember what the reason was. And I used to go to Amsterdam every year for the summer board meeting of Sonos, which had its European headquarters outside of Amsterdam. So we'd have the board meeting there, and I would spend a couple of extra days in Amsterdam, and I figured out that he was there, and we connected, and I went to his house. I can vaguely remember the house, which I think was on one of the canals. And but I haven't connected with him for a while.
So
you want to do a clip?
Well, so that will be the clip, but we can
I
also.
didn't say much to clip. I could do
Hey Dan, we'll
it's
get
Stewart. I haven't talked to you in 20 years, but something like that.
We'll get there, but because this is all kind of like organic, and so Netherlands,
unplanned.
Sonos, yeah. Well, there's a great philosophical angle we could go into what organic means, but we will resist the bait. So Sonos, voice over IP, 1996, 1997. So the internet had just been invented and popularized, and now you're trying to figure
20
out.
years earlier. The internet originally was an academic protocol that lasted for 10 or 15 years before it became commercial.
But now people are using it. Millions of people are using it, and they're trying to do things like what we're doing, which is really funny because Riverside is this awesome piece of technology that we've switched over in order to get high quality video and do all these other things like make clips and all these things. But I can barely see you because of the fuzziness of the internet connection, because they're doing something for some random technical reason, which is related to the 1996, 1997.
So in other words, I'm as fuzzy to you as you are to me?
Yes, but on the outside, it will be much better than my traditional software, which was Zoom, for both video and audio.
Huh. So they're recording all the data, but they're not displaying
What they
Except
do,
I can
what they, I know what the end product of what they do, which is that they basically get a local. They're recording locally to your computer, both video and audio. And I figured out how to do that on Zoom just for video, but Zoom video. I mean, sorry, just for audio. Zoom video is not very good still. So they're recording it locally, and that's why we have to like stay afterwards in order for it to upload. It's at 98% uploading right now, and if we were to quit, it would ruin it because it wouldn't somehow save to the cloud database. So that's what it's like. They've got a cloud database, and they've got both of our things connecting to it and sending it locally. And something about what they do is really innovative that a lot of other people can't do.
So I can guess. It's a guess because I don't know, but the issue is synchronizing what's going over the internet. So they record locally for high quality, but they only sync in real time what they can sync in real time, given whatever the data speeds on the internet are. And then they finish uploading the data that they can't sync in real time, which is slightly off real time. It's what's referred to as near real time. NRT, and which is interesting because I guess they want to make sure they're dealing with the lowest possible data rate and still capturing high quality audio. So they're assuming the bottom rather than the top, and lossless video. I do know too much. Lossless video means you never lose any video packet, data packet. And so you always maintain a connection in real time that you can, but you asynchronously store the data that you need, which is an artifact of, and it's not totally an artifact because I could be on a cellular connection, which would be worse than what we have right now. Just so everybody knows, I'm in a hotel in Los Angeles with an unknown quality of internet connection. You'd assume a hotel would be good, but who knows? And you're at home at your normal place, which is not the best connection. So,
yeah, it's substandard. And this, I think it's your connection that is the issue on this one, because it's never been this fuzzy before.
And you have never been this fuzzy. Yeah.
And I love it because it's funny. Just we can go down this train of thought, which is I grew up.
You may want to put yourself back in the center of the screen, by the way, because you're hanging out on the side of it.
So I grew up with you complaining a lot, and it's funny because wait. So
is that a kid complaining about his dad?
And so it relates to geopolitics, which I would love to go into because, man, the last week have been very interesting. There was one point when you, a few years ago, called out Elon Musk, and it was a very divisive and controversial complaint, which I think I agree with you of, like, he didn't set up the thing for his customers, and he doesn't really give a shit about his customers. Well, does he? Actually, yeah.
No. He doesn't. He doesn't care about anybody, actually. He cares about what he accomplishes. I mean, I've had 2 interactions with Elon Musk, and in both cases it was like, what a fool I was. I was just being rational and realistic and practical, which is not anything that Musk even thinks about. He doesn't care about interactions with individuals. He doesn't care. Steve Jobs didn't either, and there's a sort of spectrum. It's an interesting word, but of how much you care about individuals and your interactions with others. And Steve didn't really care. He'd yell at people, and if people didn't meet his standards, he would dismiss them and not deal with them. Elon Musk is like he doesn't. Even if you meet his standard, he doesn't give a shit. So he exists in his own frame of reference. Which is pretty broad and pretty remarkable, but he has no social skills, whatever. So he, like, caring about customers, who cares? I mean, I'm making a product and they can buy it or not, it's up to them.
But Steve cared about the customers, right?
Steve Jobs he cared about it because he this is not totally clear, but in his own mind, he was a proxy for the customer that he was serving.
Oh,
So
yeah,
he
I got it.
made the products for himself, but he expected everybody else to appreciate it.
So let's go into the geopolitics because I'm struggling to figure out what just happened.
You mean between Trump and Musk?
Yeah.
That's not geopolitics. That's two bros pissed off at each other.
But so Musk made Trump more palatable to me because Musk is competent. Musk doesn't feel like he's as self-serving. Of course, he's self-serving in the sense that you just mentioned, which is that he cares about his accomplishments and do all those things. But he doesn't feel like he make a meme coin, although some people definitely criticize Musk for being a sort of a fraudster with some of the things that he does.
Doge. Where did Doge come from? It was a meme coin, or it is a meme coin.
I think he's made that's a great point. He was making fun of Doge. He has always made fun of Doge as this meme coin. And it's funny, I once met the creator of Dogecoin back in 2015 at a bar in San Francisco, and there was a meetup for the old school Bitcoiners, and it was really funny meeting him because that was a joke that he did. And so I believe that Elon Musk was making a joke out of meme coin. Trump went ahead and rugged, which is the cryptocurrency saying basically scammed people through a meme coin. Like, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, because
Malay
he
also got involved.
he has no moral framework to operate from. He's just making money. He's scamming people. He didn't scam people. He did a meme coin and thought he'd make a lot of money, and then the value went out of it. And so then he went, oh, well, I have to do something else to make it worth something. So then he did the dinner and, incented people to buy a lot more Trump coin. And so he ended up, and I assume he sold some of his Trump coin and turned it into cash when it was peaking. I don't know what it is now.
There's definitely that criticism of Trump, which is that he's doing all these things and maybe even doing tariffs and other things in order to elevate or volatility, introduce political volatility into the markets so that his insiders can essentially
profit from it. I mean, even the dinner that he held, there were complaints from the guys that flew from like China and stuff to have a personal meeting with Donald Trump, and he showed up and gave a little speech and left. So that was it. He didn't care.
No utility. And this is the funny thing about cryptocurrency is there's this whole utility thing. But now it's open season on crypto, and now it doesn't matter what you call the utility. Doesn't matter what the SEC thinks. It's all gravy as long as someone's making money.
As long as Trump is making money.
Well, Trump and his friends, right? And then that brings all to the political allegiances. But back to the main point, which is that Musk diverging from Trump, the reason Trump was more palatable was because of that alliance specifically to me. I'm really interested, as I think you are, in America that's more powerful, that is more, that has rockets, that doesn't let China go and do their helium-3 mining on the moon, which apparently they're doing. And so that is of interest to me, and Trump kind of still represents that maybe a little bit. But without Musk, it's like, okay, I'm less interested in what's going on. And there's another piece, which I think we might disagree on, about the surveillance state and that type of thing. But yeah, any thoughts there?
So I'll mention on the plane down here from Seattle to Los Angeles last night, I watched a documentary, 90-minute documentary, that a guy that I met in Seattle mentioned to me called Wild Wild Space. It's on Max, and
great.
It's actually an HBO documentary, I guess. But and it talks about 3 entrepreneurs, 2 successful and 1 not, space entrepreneurs. Pete Beck at Rocket Lab. Can't remember the guy's name. Who started Planet Labs, and Chris Kemp at Astra, and Astra's the one that didn't succeed. He tried launching like 20 times, and only twice did it get off the pad. And so it's pretty interesting because it delves into, Elon Musk has 70% of the satellites up there, and get into Ukraine and stuff like that. And I don't know how old it is, but it was pretty current. And they start talking about how Russia blew up one of its own satellites to demonstrate that it could. And of course, in doing that, they contributed a lot of junk to space junk, which is a real issue. And then China was not yet considered a space power when the documentary was made, but they were working on it. And so, there was no alternative to Starlink. So the Starlink was already dominant. Even if it was made 2 years ago, it was like already dominant. And they mentioned the stuff in the Ukraine about how Russia knocked out all of Ukraine's comms, so Starlink stepped in and provided thousands of terminals to the Ukrainians so they could operate outside of Russia's capabilities. Anyway, it's a pretty interesting thing, and it's kind of a good summary. It's the three entrepreneur thing is kind of an angle that doesn't really matter because Rocket Lab is successful and Planet is successful and Astra wasn't, and kind of who cares. But it talks about how low orbit satellites are changing Earth because you can see all of it and see it almost in real time, and so that's the part that makes it really interesting. So it is about the surveillance state, but what?
Oh, interesting. Oh, okay, yeah, okay, got it. I connected. The low Earth orbit satellites are making it every. And this, like, I did an interview with a company called Umbra Satellites, and it seems clear that anybody in the world can now, including myself, including any consumer, go and find out what is going on anywhere in the world.
Yeah,
That's really weird.
Analyst. They have this analyst who clearly used to work for the CIA, although that's not said. Talking about how in the old days, right, the U.S. would say, and give you a really grainy picture and say, well, there was a nuclear factory here and we blew it up. And you're going like, there was no way to independently verify that. So she's talking about how Planet started they put up like 200 or 300 satellites, so it's not as much as Starlink, but it's only about taking high-resolution photographs of the Earth. And they cover the entire Earth every day, so you can see time lapse, and she shows how they spotted a nuclear submarine the Chinese had going inside Earth. Right, so the Chinese had excavated a submarine base underground to hide their submarines, but can't hide it when it's coming in and out. And so there's a picture, and it's in the documentary of it goes in, and she goes, and see, this is the first time we actually saw the submarine going into what looks like a landmass. So there has to be a cave in there that's big enough to hold submarines. It's a pretty remarkable spot.
Whoa.
So if you're worried about...
Yeah, let's talk about it. Go, if I'm worried about what?
If you're worried about surveillance state, the problem is, what's the state, right? The Chinese are one state, and we're another state, and the Russians are actually way behind in this regard, and so it's really between us and the Chinese about what we can see of each other. And we already and have years of watching what the Chinese are doing, but they're catching up and they're beginning to figure out what we're up to.
Yeah. And there's one question about the mining on the helium-3 on the moon. I heard that. I have not corroborated that, but my understanding is the Chinese are mining helium-3 on the dark side of the moon for some reason.
Could be, but they're the only entity that got to the dark side. The entrepreneurial attempts to do it have all crashed.
Wow. All right, so there's that angle, but I also want to investigate about the surveillance state, about what you just mentioned, in terms of my main issue with where we're headed right now. There's a few things, but huge power to the surveillance state, to a government. Trump is, under my impression right now, building the surveillance state. And the motivation right now is to go find illegal immigrants and use the surveillance state to go after illegal immigrants in order to kick them out of the country. It's like I think that we should have a border around our country and we shouldn't let anybody into the country. But also, I think that they're building the weaponry to essentially, like, if the Trump administration then loses power, the enemy, like who I consider the enemy, the Democrats, like if the Democrats have that power, and they were also looking to build that power during it, and I was very against that. like doesn't really matter who's in power. They're building the technology that will essentially enable the next people to come in and use it for other purposes. And it's really about the surveillance of U.S. citizens. Like that was the thing that I think my grandfather, your father, was against. Everybody in the intelligence agency was against that. But then there's some switch, and all of a sudden now it's open game. Maybe that's for geopolitical reasons that I don't understand. Of like that there is no strong border anymore. Like, what do you think?
It's not about borders. It's about who's in power. Trump doesn't give a shit, right? Really doesn't fundamentally give a shit. So he's doing what makes him money. He's doing what aggrandizes him and makes it entertaining, or whatever it is. You can't rationally analyze Trump's motivations because there's no reason there. The thing that was really weird, and actually the Supreme Court just allowed them to do this, is Doge's effort to look at people's personal information, right? And it's a commercial standard that you don't store people's personally identifiable information, PII. And the government has been, the most conservative, regardless of who's in power, on that score, right? The government should not have access to people's personal data except under, very rigorous circumstances. The Supreme Court just yesterday said, okay, yeah, you can go look at that. No problem. It's like, what? That is a reversal in what all people in America agreed to, right? That the government should not surveil individuals, and that personally identifiable information should not be accessible to companies either, that people should be able to control their own data. And there's no executive order. It's just like Trump packed the Supreme Court. He packed the local courts or appeals. He packed the state legislatures, and he is now controlling everything. And his buddies are allowing stuff to happen that we previously agreed not to allow happen under any circumstance. So, what exactly is Doge looking at for Social Security data? If they're trying to figure out how to fix the IT problem, that's one thing. But if they're actually sort of taking copies of the data and turning it into and putting an LLM on it or whatever, it's like this is unsupervised and not known to the public. And America's always operated on the idea that we're of the people and the people should know what the hell's going on.
So yeah, let's go back on that, because in the 90s, and this is for our history, I grew up, we talked about it last week, with a free and open internet. Really loved that idea. Really loved the cypherpunk stuff that Steve Jobs was talked about. Like, it felt like there was a strong privacy, like things that the U.S. government couldn't do, and people within the U.S. government also agreed that. But there was a switch, and all of a sudden it stopped working like that. And I would put it at 2001 with the Patriot Act, or sorry, 2002 maybe with the Patriot Act. Like all of a sudden with that switch, there was a switch to, okay, well, now we're surveilling U.S. citizens. We don't really care about privacy, open season. But can you talk more about the vibe in the 1990s about what I just said? What was going on in the 1990s related to that?
Well, I think the key event was, I'm trying to remember what it was called. I think it's not operating anymore, but there was an agreement in the government across multiple branches that the internet was a utility that essentially at the level of everybody should have access to it, and that it should be free and open.
Yeah, interesting.
The open internet thing. I'd have to go back and kind of get the names because
I'm looking at it.
But there was a formal agreement, and legislation was passed that said that's the way it is. So that's the underlying assumption about everything. So whether you're talking about copyright or you're talking about personal information or any of that kind of stuff, the rule was that everything was free and open, but there were certain rules about how you could use data. And I don't think that's ever been like unlegislated. There's never been any formal thing.
Yeah.
But people's attitudes towards it have changed. So I've been running around with my limitless pendant talking to people. And everybody says
really
the very first thing they say is, "Oh, so you're like recording me? Do you tell people that
Yeah.
you're recording them?" And
Yeah.
I've learned at this point that it's ruled by states, and New Mexico happens to be a one-person state. California happens to be a two-person. Both people have to opt in, and the so there's like there are these technical rules about privacy, but the overlay on that is anybody who knows anything knows that nothing is private anymore. Right? They know everything. They, whoever they are. And so, I'm pretty sure that people can't steal my money, but they probably know I have money.
I get it. And on the state thing, thank you for that. That's really interesting that it depends on the state, because I think people are going to have to start being more like, if somebody's recording somebody without their consent, like that's an ethical issue, regardless of the legislation on it. Although, of course, like we're entering a world where it's just like, you just have to assume it. And like you said, it's happening. So can you fact check my understanding of AI? Let's choose Facebook. Facebook has gotten into a lot of trouble and has just a brand about it that anybody can track down things about an individual or a group based on internet exhaust data. So that me creating a friend request to somebody else, they can see how the data fits together, and that's the reason why the surveillance state is able to do this. Is that accurate?
Well, when you say surveillance state, state is a concept of a political body.
Not state. Facebook can improve their marketing by targeting individuals or groups through internet exhaust data.
It's called digital exhaust, by the way. But
digital exhaust.
So yes, but get into the kind of business model for Facebook. And originally, Facebook was, seeding people so they would engage and reveal themselves publicly. Right. Number one, Facebook required you to use your real name. And then they did the whole, what's it called? It's not adrenaline, but
move things and break fast.
No, that's the coding part of it. But in terms of the product, they incented you to dopamine. It's a dopamine reaction that you would get this sense of satisfaction by yelling at people or whatever. This is the cesspool effect. And people bought into it. We really hadn't learned how to use it. This is a really good parallel to the advent of television, because TV was a phenomenal, engaging thing, and people started watching it for like 8 or 10 hours a day, and didn't go to work or whatever. I mean, it really interrupted the sort of flow of life, if you will. And it took a while for the general population to understand that and figure out how to control it if they wanted to. Same thing has happened with social media, but the way that Facebook got whatever it is 3 billion users is by getting people to engage and reveal themselves. And so that now exists, and they have all that data, and they can target people very specifically by almost any factor. Political affiliation, geography, demographics. You want to go after, you want to find the 32-year-old men who live in Indianapolis and are Republicans. You can do that, all 10 of them or whatever, but or 1,000 or 10,000.
But only through the ad system. Like, do you think Facebook actually goes in and finds individuals? They're just doing this for groups of individuals, right?
Yeah, but the groups are pretty small because they have so much data about every individual.
Interesting.
So that's why small businesses can use Facebook as an advertising medium, because they can target, the 100 people that do business with them in the local area, and pound on those people.
Whoa.
And they don't spend a lot of money, but it has a real effect on their demand. That's never been true before. That sort of high value targeting, and what Facebook has realized is they don't need the dopamine anymore. They've already done it. So they've made the feed much less volatile or evil, but they still can target you for commercial purposes.
Okay, that's a really interesting point. Let's go into let's break apart my understanding of what the internet is. So Facebook created the walled garden, as we talked about last week. So everything is happening on Facebook, but that didn't destroy the internet. It just changed the relative attention for the internet.
Well, you have to balance, and we did talk about this, between the open internet, computer internet, web browser internet, and the application environment on mobile phones, which is where the walled garden comes from.
But there is this internet out there that's on the web that's kind of on the phone as well, and it's like the difference between the phone and the web breakdown. But the attention pattern is all stuck on Facebook or one of the other social medias, but the internet still exists out there. And you're a cybersecurity. You've made actually. Let's talk about that. What are all the investments in terms of cybersecurity that you've ever made?
Me personally, very few. At one portfolio company that's deep into that, but I inherited it from another partner. And that's been most of my cybersecurity experience. My partner Gilman is an expert in cybersecurity and understands it deeply, and we have other partners that have deep experience in cybersecurity, so I kind of picked up what they know, but I'm not an expert in cybersecurity, so I can lay out the landscape, but I don't know kind of the current bidding.
Talk about the landscape. In the 90s, what were the big cybersecurity things?
Well, nobody had it. Nobody had the internet, right? The number of people on the internet was a tiny fraction of the population. So cybersecurity wasn't that important, partially because, you couldn't bank online, you couldn't you couldn't transact online, not the way you can now. So there's been a parallelism between the functionality of the internet and the applications and the cybersecurity threat, right? Because was it Willie, the bank robber said, why do you rob banks? And he says, well, that's where the money is. That drives illegal behavior. And so people are either trying to make money by fooling you into something where you spend your money on them, or by just going out and scaling it. The other one, and this is my landscape, so you talk to cybersecurity people, you get into the weeds right away, but there are only two things that you really want to protect, either as an institution or as an individual, and that's your money and your secrets. You don't want your secrets to not be secret anymore, and you don't want your money to get stolen or to be tricked into using it for useless reasons. So the only things that really matter are money and secrets. And this is true for the U.S. government. Right? They need to make sure the currency is stable and secure, and that banks are, managing it appropriately. In fact, 2008 was a problem with that. And then they want to make sure they can keep secrets so the Chinese and Russians can't get them. But in the world now, this is part of what we started out talking about, is everybody knows everything now, right? We know where all the tanks in China are. We even know where the submarines are, even though they hit them underground. And you have to assume they know everything about us too. So it's not secrets anymore. It used to be actual secrets, right? That you knew who knew, and the only way to keep a secret is to kill the other person who knows the same thing. That's a line. Now, there really aren't any secrets. It's more a matter of how fast you can figure out what's going on.
Yeah, interesting. So that might be, maybe I should just stop caring about the surveillance state, because what I got from what you just said about is that there are no secrets anymore. Mm-mm. I mean, maybe the U.S. government probably has some secrets from China, although maybe China is now good enough. But we're in the information age.
Well, we kind of gave it to them, but that's a whole other thread, right? This book called Apple in China is all about how Apple basically exported everything the U.S. knew to China. And China figured it out and went, whoa, look at this. Oh, this is really cool. We'll manufacture everything, and then we'll figure out how to make this stuff, how to design it.
Wow. Man. Such an interesting world we're headed into. Or maybe already are in now.
I think we are.
Information age. Do you remember the first time you heard the term information age? Do you know who popularized that?
No, that sort of seeped out.
Because Bill Gates talked about a lot about it, right? The information superhighway.
Yeah, it's not, the information age is more of a generic term that sort of, it gets hard to track the source back, but the information superhighway is a metaphor that people came up with early in the internet, trying to describe what they thought would happen. And, like the Apple Knowledge Navigator video, which was pre-internet. And then when the internet started happening, and there was actually, I wonder if I could find it now, AT&T did a man in the street video, it's like 5 minutes, where they went around in New York and said, they would stick a microphone in somebody's head. Do you know where the information highway is? Superhighway? Excuse me. Do you know where the information superhighway is? And they go, yeah, I think you go up to 60th Street and go west. I think there's an on-ramp. It's like, people are like, this is a really funny video. And I'm sorry I don't have a copy of it. Maybe I can find one on the internet, but I've looked for it before, but I'm not sure AT&T ever saved it itself. But it's really funny what's true and what's perceived. In any time when you're in a fast-changing environment, the perception lags. We get it right? Yeah, perception lags the reality because it has to be diffused and people have to absorb it and internalize it. And so even now with AI, we've talked about this, the people in San Francisco think they're the only ones that know what's going on. And it's largely true. If you go outside of San Francisco, people are going, this AI stuff is like, what, are you worried about it? That's why I've been having that conversation for the last couple of days. And you go like, and it's a test of your point of view. You could be a boomer or a doomer, but nobody really knows what's going on. So, are you the kind of person that thinks everything is doomy or boomy?
It's all the framework now. It's all the framework with which we view it. I'm now very solid on the idea that I don't need to be in San Francisco in order to find the information that I need. I now know that what we're doing at AI Whispers is essentially state of the art. That we're doing things that people in San Francisco are doing, and there's no lag because I know the people in San Francisco because I talked to my friend Eric.
Yeah, but even if you don't, if you've kind of intellectually bought into it, you can keep track of what's going on. It's like, this is the information age, and information is always readily available. The problem is there's so damn much of it that you have to figure out how to sort it out.
How do you sort it out? It sounds like when you were younger, you just loved it. You fell into it, and then step by step, you just kept on kind of being at the edge.
Well, it was like when I discovered the personal computer business, and I thought it was kind of slow, but from 1979 to 1981, I went from being, look at personal computers, this is interesting, to working in the business and doing it full time and running a newspaper, magazine newspaper that was weekly. So every week we were reporting on stuff, and every time you turn around, it's very much like it is right now with AI, except it was a much smaller domain. All I had to do was figure out how the computer worked and how software was written and distributed. And now it's like, I can't. And I've had this thought. Maybe it's because I'm older now and I can't keep up with it. So I'm constantly deciding: do I really care about this? Do I really want to know about this at this level? So I'm sort of barely hanging on. Where you're into it full time, thinking about it all the time, and I spent 2 days at a conservation meeting Wednesday and Thursday, and I'm like really into it, right? And these nerdy talks about how fresh water stays pure, and how fish genetics and stuff like that. And it's like, it takes time to understand that. That's not about AI. It's not about what's going on in the tech world. So
Yeah,
I'm
it's
like
about learning.
splitting my attention now. I'm not totally focused on it. Excuse me. And so, I think about this. Well, maybe I'm just too old to kind of keep up with this, and I'm not fully engaged in the AI world. And I'm not totally unhappy about that. But I keep track of it at a high level. So.
Yeah, well, and I think it's not necessary to do it because we could also use it's like cybersecurity. It was just like you didn't go full into cybersecurity because that didn't interest you in the same way. You're in the media. You're like there's various things that we focus on, and AI is a meta technology. So like what's happening in AI is expanding the ability to go into all these different things. And there's one really interesting thing that the singularitarians came up with, which I think might be one of the parts of their prophecy. I say quote Marx is that there's a point at which the reason why it's called the singularity is because there's a point at which you can no longer understand what's going on inside of the technological world because it's just happening so quickly. So you just can't, like, once you're out of it, you can't get into it. Does that make sense? What do you think of that?
So I'm part of the singularity because I can't figure out what the hell's going on.
All of us, they take it to the next degree, which is that you have to merge with the machine, like the Musk's stated explicit vision of why we needed OpenAI to be an open AI was because if the machines do it and we don't merge with the machines, then we're all going to die because AI will kill us all. It seems like a totally bankrupt thing at this moment of AI as this thing outside of humans that's going to somehow have its own will. Like that feels like it's just not happening. I do think we need to worry about humans with AI, but the AI on its own sort of thing, disconnected from human beings, I think that's bankrupt. But that's Musk's whole thing. Like, is like we need to stop that future from happening. So he created OpenAI so that it would not happen, so that we could basically merge with the machines in this responsible way, so that we could get out of that loop.
So I haven't paid a whole lot of attention to the singularity. There's a singularity university in Silicon Valley, which I've never been to, but I've talked to people about. So what you're saying is the ideal world is when machines and people are on the same level and cooperating with each other.
Well, yeah, there's a couple different
singularity
theories.
is that touch point.
Yeah, and there's a couple different theories, and we don't have to go into those theories because they're sort of gnarly. But a lot of people in Silicon Valley want to do them, and I think they're living in sci-fi fantasy land. Yeah, we could save those for another show.
Please.
So, 90s cybersecurity, last 10 minutes or so, knowledge management. We go back into knowledge management.
You're not going to do that in 10 minutes.
Yeah. What are you most excited about right now?
In tech or life?
Both. Anyone.
So I said I was at this conservation meeting in Idaho.
Yeah.
And it was Trout Unlimited. And so really what it is a science briefing for the core supporters of TU. And there was a presentation by a young lady who has a PhD in probably fish biology or something like that. But I mean, she's been incredibly well educated and is a true nerd, just like nerds and computers. So she's tackling, and she wasn't being definitive about it. She was addressing the issue of, are hatcheries good? And there's in the world of conservation, it is a firm belief, an assumed belief that hatcheries are not good. They produce fish that are not wild and are not competitive, and they when they're released into the wild, they mix with the wild trout, wild fish, and degrade the whole population. And she's done. First of all, there's a survey of all the studies of fish genetics, and then she's been doing research and has gotten to the point where she's wondering whether that's actually valid. She's essentially established that the genetics of wild fish and hatchery fish are identical. and that there's no delta in the genetics, that it's all a matter of environment. In other words, hatchery fish are grown up in a fake environment, not the wild. So they have the same genetics, but they're not as competitive, and so that creates issues. But by definition, hatcheries are not necessarily bad. Wow, I was like, I was asking her questions. I was sitting next to her while she was standing up presenting, and there's like 25 people in the room, and I started peppering her with questions because this is like really interesting to me.
Yeah.
And she turns to me, she says, "Who is this guy anyway?" 'Cause I distracted her and derailed her conversation. But that when you say, "What am I excited about?" That, like, oh my God, as old as I am, I'm sitting here learning real stuff. I love that.
So this relates to my experience because I've heard about this hatchery thing. I've heard that farmed fish is actually really bad for your health because if you eat, and particularly salmon.
That's more saltwater fish, and that's a separate issue. And there's a really good book called Five Fishes. I can't remember exactly what it is, that talks about the 5 fish they try to farm. And
interesting.
Debates why it's good, and there are good farming practices. So like the salmon, king salmon raised in New Zealand, where salmon were not native, are really high quality, and they do a really good job of managing it. But then there's the salmon fisheries out off the coast of Iceland where they're not that well managed, and the farm salmon escape, and they are super weird. There's like deformed fish and stuff like that escaping into the wild. So fresh and salt are different ways, are farmed differently. But
and I'll give my anecdote. So as I've lived in Brazil at various times, and I used to live in a favela, and we used to do sushi delivery to the favela, and so they would deliver this really pink salmon as part of the sushi. And then I've been back to Brazil enough to know that it's just like that salmon is definitely farmed, and now I don't eat it anymore because now I can taste the disgustingness of it. And so I'm in Argentina, and it's a similar thing. And we both love sushi, and I think over the past 20 years, sushi itself has changed drastically because of these fish farming practices.
Well, because of the demand, right? How are you going to supply enough sushi at a price that people can afford? Sort of the most expensive form of raw fish. But so and how do you trace it? How do you know where it came from? That's a real issue. And so you have to trust your sushi chef to know how to source the real stuff.
So, what are the healthiest sushi genetics? Like, what fish can be farmed and is healthy for sushi?
Well, that's this book that I read called Five Fishes. That I think it's called Five Fishes, and because it traces how they figured out how to farm each of the 5 fish, and there's huge genetic differences that lead to it being easier or harder. So I'll see if I can remember that salmon is one of them. And you can't really farm tuna. Cod is one of them. What I refer to as branzino, but there's a different name for it. And that's at least 3 of them. Haddock. Yeah, I guess cod and haddock are closely related, so maybe that's the same fish. Anyway, so they go through the history of how it's been farmed over the last, because it's only been in the last 30 or 40 years that the supply of fish is not enough to supply everybody's demand for fish. And fish is, of course, the healthiest form of mass consumption, if you will. Like beef has its issues, and veggies are veggies, but not everybody eats them. And chickens is like whatever. Fish are like high protein. Some of them have the omega-3. Omega-3 fatty acids, and so fish are like. So if you really enjoy fish, then you can eat a lot of fish, and it's better for you. whether it's raw or cooked. And so the demand for fish is far outstripping the supply.
So last thing before we end, so Argentina, as you may know, recently changed their immigration laws, and they copied Trump in the sense that it's like they put a number and they just did it 1/10 of what Trump did. So Trump said, "Yo, okay, you can be a U.S. citizen for $5 million," and I think it's just a pure investment play. But then Malay is like, "Okay, 500,000, you can become a citizen for Argentina." And get the passport and everything like that. But they specifically, I think, are going after not doing it based on real estate or any other just like simple investments. And so I think I'm coming up with various ways that I could get my citizenship. And so one idea is a tobacco farm, going back to our heritage of, I think it was my great grandfather who wants to do or who was a tobacco farmer, or you just gave me the idea of a healthy fish farm for sushi.
Yeah. So just to pull that together, there's a rainbow trout farm up near Shasta.
Okay.
I remember the name of it. And the guy is like, I don't know if he's ever made money at it, but trying to remember the name. It's right on the edge of my
I'll
brain.
find it and ask you later.
Yeah. Something farmed. Anyway. And he did a really optimal job. He did the whole science thing, and he figured out how to make the healthiest, tastiest rainbow trout. So all the chefs in San Francisco started adopting it. So you can get whatever this, like I wish I could remember the name, but you know, they put it on the menu. They put the brand on the menu and say, we have this kind of trout, McFarland Springs trout, something like that. And all the chefs are going like, this is really good stuff. I like it personally, so I'm going to put it on the menu. Of course, it's more expensive, but these fish are primo. Of course, when the wildfires hit, the farm burned.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's still going, but so you can figure this stuff out, but it tends to be a really intensive, expensive process to make really good farm fish, and not damage the environment in the process. And that's the problem. It's an elitist thing. You can do it if you have the money, but then it doesn't help everybody else.
The mass consumer thing. Okay. Well, I'll leave that one for later. So thank you for the show, and listeners, tune in next week, and don't forget to subscribe.